Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the special public meeting of the whole of the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa. Bon après-midi, mesdames et messieurs, et bienvenue à cette réunion publique spéciale du comité plénier de dérogation pour la Ville d'Ottawa. This is in fact a very historic meeting. I don't believe, and staff can correct me, I don't believe the Committee of Adjustment has ever had a meeting electronically. So we're making history today, folks. So welcome. The Committee of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial tribunal appointed by City Council to make decisions on certain applications under the Planning Act. Before I begin, I have a few comments and instructions to provide. So first, for the record, the notice of the public meeting, the special meeting of the Committee of the Whole, was posted to the city's website on Friday, May 1st, 2020. The draft motion that will be considered as part of this meeting was posted on Monday, May 4th, 2020. Staff, can I have confirmation of quorum for the meeting, please? I think we do, but I just need confirmation from our Secretary Treasurer, if you would, of quorum so that we can proceed.
I've unmuted him.
Okay.
Cheryl, do you have that information? Madam Chair, we need a minimum of 8 members of the committee required to be present at any meeting of the Committee of the Whole in order for business to be conducted. I see a minimum of 8 members, and so you have a quorum, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so in terms of the instructions, just please note that this meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. The video will then be archived and made available on the Committee of Adjustment webpage within, and I take it next 5 business days would be sufficient time. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Secretary Treasurer. Only the Chair and the Secretary Treasurer should be visible during the meeting. We would ask you that unless you're invited to speak, that you close your video function and mute your microphone. If you've joined the meeting using your phone, please do not put your phone on hold, as this will result in the broadcast of hold music online. Public delegations will be provided 5 minutes in which to make their comments once called upon to speak. Be sure to keep your comments, questions directly related to the contents of the motion proposed. The committee members may choose to ask you follow-up questions once your remarks are concluded. That's it for the instructions. So in terms of the agenda for this afternoon, we're going to start with confirmation that the members of the committee have had a chance to receive and review the draft motion that was posted. May I have just a confirmation? If someone has not, and I'm going to assume you all have, if someone has not, I need you to hold up your hand. Okay, seeing none, we're going to confirm that in fact the committee has had a chance to review the motion. Can I call then at this time for someone to move the motion? Any movers?
I'll move.
All right, Scott is moving the motion. I need a seconder. Kathleen Willis is seconder for the motion. Thank you very much. I think we'll proceed at this point to a brief overview of the purpose and contents of the motion by our Secretary Treasurer. So the floor is yours, Michelle. Michelle, you're on mute.
Let me see if I can unmute. Am I unmuted?
Yes, you're fine now. Thank you.
You can hear me?
Yes.
All right. So, Madam Chair, I just want to confirm that the necessary number of votes to pass a motion or an amendment is a simple majority of those present and voting. And in terms of a summary of the motion and the amendment that are proposed, Madam Chair, the motion includes a series of proposed amendments to the committee's rules of procedure to enable the committee to hold electronic hearings under the provisions of the Statutory Powers Procedure Act. Because organized public events of no more than 5 people are prohibited, as you know, due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, the City of Ottawa has decided to remain in a state of emergency and has extended the existing closures of city facilities, services, and large public gatherings until June 30th, 2020. And so these amendments would allow us to hold future hearings by electronic means, including the ones currently scheduled for June 3rd and June 17th. Madam Chair, I'm not going to read the motion as it is quite lengthy, and I'm sure that members have had a chance to read through it. Also, the motion along with the agenda for this meeting, as you have indicated, have been publicly available on both the cities and our Committee of Adjustments web pages. Also, Madam Chair, in reviewing our process for issuing decisions, especially in the context of electronic hearings, I'm recommending the following amendment to the motion for the committee's consideration, and which was circulated to all members of the Committee of the Whole yesterday. And I will read this part, that the motion be amended to add the following. And this would be an amendment to Rule 24.3. And it reads as follows: all final decisions, the existing rule as it reads is all final decisions of the committee on an application made under the Planning Act shall be in writing and shall set out the reasons for the decision and shall be signed by the members who concur in the decision. And the amendment, it would add the following: a member may sign a decision by electronic means, and the Secretary Treasurer may send a notice of decision by electronic means. So, Madam Chair, this would allow members to, quote, sign a decision by sending an email to committee staff and allows to email decisions. And this amendment would, of course, need to be moved and seconded by members of the committee. I'm
All right.
happy to answer any questions that members may have.
All right, so let's do that. Let's move to a motion to incorporate the amendment. Do I have a motion? Do I have a mover? All right, Fabian, thank you. Mr. Poulin, do I have a seconder? Thank you, Mr. Vervoet, for that. Okay, that said then, let's move on to the next portion, which is any questions or comments by the committee on either the original motion or the amendment as read by Mr. Belmar. Kathleen, Ms. Willis and Mr. Hindle. We'll start with Ms. Willis.
Okay, just procedurally, I just stay with my video off, right? Is
No,
that?
if you can put your video on when you're speaking. In fact, that would be helpful.
Oh, it says I can't. Anyway, sorry. The host has asked you to start, okay? Sorry about this, okay. Just a quick question on the amendment that allows the electronic signing. Mr. Belmar, can you explain what that is? Is it you have to, do you send an email saying that you concur? Do you send a PDF of the motion with your signature on it? How does that work?
We're still working out the exact protocols for that, Madam Chair. I believe that we will be sending an email to members of the panel following the hearing in order to confirm their decision with respect to each of the posted items. But we will prepare a protocol for members of committee so that it's clear as to how we will be proceeding with respect to electronic signatures. There may be some different options that we can explore, and we're going to want to give that a bit more thought at the committee staff level.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Hindle.
Great. I just wanted to address, I know we got the one comment from the public, and I just wanted to address that I tend to concur that if possible, if there is an ability to add hearings, either to minimize the depth of the hearing schedule for each of the committee meetings on the existing dates that we've already scheduled, or if we can add in, say, ad hoc meetings with subgroups of potentially more straightforward applications or something like that to basically catch ourselves up to our normal rhythm. I would certainly be supportive of that. And I think I've reached out to the Secretary Treasurer to offer my my services if we need to put together another panel of some description to get those going. But obviously that'll be subject to the capacity of staff to get us there.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hindle. I too had had a discussion with our Secretary Treasurer about that. It's an operational sort of element. Mr. Secretary Treasurer, would you like to address what your plans are with regards to trying to expedite the hearing of the backlog, I guess?
Sure. Madam Chair, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so Member Hindle is raising a point here that was also raised by a written comment that was submitted to the committee with respect to today's agenda. And essentially, it's a request that we consider having more hearings. And currently, as Member Hindle points out, we have hearings twice monthly, so every 2 weeks. And the request that has come in is that could we consider perhaps weekly meetings? And the other issue that was brought up was with respect to the posting of notices and signs. And I don't know if you want me to address that part as well. But with respect to more hearings, committee staff are confident that we can work through the backlog of applications that we currently have fairly quickly without adding any more hearings to the scheduled, the current schedule that we have over the next couple of months. If we were to have hearings on a weekly basis, the amount of work and preparation involved would increase significantly. And the risk of missed statutory deadlines due to shifting timelines would also pose a serious challenge to staff who are, of course, during this COVID-19 pandemic, working remotely. So there are, as you know, Madam Chair, many steps to get an application ready for a hearing and issuing decisions. And sometimes revised applications and drawings are at different stages of the process can also cause delays that are simply beyond our control. Your committee staff will be aiming to balance the hearing agendas for the month of June and going forward in order to ensure a maximum level of productivity for both committee staff and members and maintain the quality of service to our clients and the public. We are mindful that the Committee of Adjustment process also ties in with other city processes. So for example, if building permits are not being issued currently, then increasing the frequency of our hearings would not necessarily be of any real benefit to the public.
All right, thank you. There is a second portion to Mr. D'Angelo's submission to us where he talks about possibly varying the notice periods. So I think that one's pretty simple to address if you'd like to just.
Well, that's right, Madam Chair. Quite simply, if Mr. D'Angelo is referring to the statutory provisions or appeal period under the Planning Act, then of course the Committee of Adjustment has no authority to deviate from those prescribed timelines under the statute.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Clarification? Okay, I'm not seeing any, oh, Kathleen, Ms. Willis, please. Yes, Ms. Willis.
The meetings that we have scheduled for June, I can't remember off the top, June 3rd and
17th, I guess.
17th,
It's the
I
3rd
guess.
and 17th.
So will that first meeting deal with the items that were canceled, that were already all dealt with and reviewed and we were ready to go have a hearing? Is that first hearing to deal with that complete agenda, or could we hear those already completed applications at an earlier date?
We are working towards a June 3rd timeline. Right now, it would not be possible to hold hearings earlier than June 3rd. And for example, for the mail out that is prescribed under the statute, the mailing of notices for that June 3rd hearing, we need to have those mailed out to residents who in the neighborhood within 60 meters of each affected property by next Friday. And so we are working hard to ensure that we will be meeting that deadline for sending out those notices. And you are correct. The plan is to work chronologically and go back to the hearings that were the applications that were scheduled for a hearing on March 18th, and look at if there are any from, for example, the April 1st scheduled hearing that we could perhaps add on to the June 3rd hearing as well. So we really want to make sure that we have balanced agendas for all the panels, and that we are addressing all of the hearings as much as possible in chronological order as we received them at the committee.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Wilder. Mr. Wilder.
Sorry.
Okay, you're on mute.
Sorry.
Ah, there you are. Right,
Right.
still on mute though.
Hold on. The question I have is, I went by one of the properties because I usually go do property inspections, and for that March 18th meeting that had been scheduled, the signs had been placed on a number of the properties already. Am I correct? And the date that was on it was for the notification of the March 18th meeting. I guess the question I have is, those signs will have to be replaced. And I guess on the signage, will the signage have something to the effect that these hearings are going to be, it won't be the standard wording on the sign necessarily, or will it? In any case, those signs, I guess, for those applications would have to be replaced.
All right, thanks for raising that, Mr. Wilder. I did have the opportunity to raise that as well with committee staff. So, Mr. Secretary Treasurer, would you like to respond to that?
Madam Chair, any signs that would have been posted for a hearing that was scheduled to take place on March 18th, those signs will need to be replaced, and in order to identify the new hearing date. The information that's on signs is not as detailed as the notices that are sent by mail to residents in the neighborhood. And so it does ask that any passersby seeking additional information on that particular application, that they contact the committee. And so all our contact information is available on the sign.
All right, thank you. Other questions? All right.
Sorry,
I'm
Madam
not-
Chair, I can't raise my hand.
All right,
There was a comment on the YouTube video. Someone, Dave DeAngelo, mentioned that building permit applications are being submitted and reviewed at this time.
oh, all right, thank you. Glad to have that clarification. Other question? Oh, Ms. McLean, Mrs. McLean, please.
Just wondered if there was the section 21.1, the objection, or 21.2, sorry, and 3 objections to the electronic format. And if there's an objection raised and the committee can cancel a hearing, or it can refuse to accept the objection, how does that play out? Is that on meeting day, or is that sometime before the meeting?
Good question. Mr. Secretary Treasurer, what was the thought behind that?
So if the committee were to receive an objection with respect to the holding of a hearing electronically, then on the hearing day, the committee would hear those arguments. In all likelihood, those comments would be submitted in writing, and we would have to consider those and see whether they do cause an extreme prejudice to proceed in that fashion. And so the rules of procedure as amended would identify a series of criteria under which the committee would consider under what circumstances would it be appropriate to not proceed with the hearing of an application, and perhaps wait until it would be possible to do so in person. Of course, the committee would have to weigh what would be the prejudice to the applicant and consider all of those factors.
Right, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I'm seeing none at this point, so I'm going to move on to the next portion, which is to open the public portion of the meeting and to hear any submissions. I don't see anyone on my screen, but just committee staff, is there anyone that you've been made aware of that would like to speak to the committee at this point?
Madam Chair, I'm going to defer to the committee coordinator on that.
We did not receive any requests to speak.
All right, thank you. Wanted to make sure that we got that for the record. And in terms of the written submissions we've talked about, Mr. D'Angelo's, were there any other submissions in writing?
We only received the one submission.
All right, thank you very much. For me, in that case, I think that was about all we need to do with regards to the public portion. We've addressed all of the possible submissions at this point, so I am going to close the public portion of the meeting. And with that, is there any further committee deliberations required on anything, or does anybody want to propose any further amendments to the motion? This would be your opportunity. Just raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Right, I'm not seeing any. So at this point, then what I think I'd like to do is to call the vote on the motion as amended, as explained by our Secretary Treasurer at the beginning of the meeting. And with that, I'm going to assume that you are in support of the motion and the amendment, unless I see your hand up, and then we will record that as a dissent.
Madam
So
Chair,
raise
if I
your
might, Madam Chair,
Yes,
if I
yes,
might
go ahead.
suggest if we could perhaps call a vote on the amendment first, and once that vote is taken, then we could proceed to a vote on the motion as amended.
All right, fair enough. We can do
I'm
that.
not sure if the amendment was moved and seconded by the same members who moved and seconded the motion, putting the motion on the table.
All right, was anybody keeping track of that at the beginning from the coordination side? I think we did, but I just want to confirm that. Okay, Ms. McLean?
So the entire motion was moved by Scott and seconded by Kathleen, and the amendment was moved by Fabian and seconded by Martin.
Thank you very much, Ms. McLean, for that. So on that basis then, Mr. Secretary Treasurer, can we not just vote on the motion as amended at this point?
Madam Chair, I believe you can consider that to be a friendly amendment if there are no objections to any of the committee members. And if there are no objections, then I would suggest that you proceed to a vote on the motion as amended.
All right, and I would agree. I think that I didn't hear anything about, any kind of opposition to the amendment during our discussion. So I'm going to going to assume that the committee members are in support of the motion as amended, and anyone who wants to dissent on that would need to raise their hand now. All right, I'm not seeing any dissents. So I believe we have a majority and we have an approved motion. Correct?
So Madam Chair, if you could just perhaps say the magic words, carried. And as long as you do not see any objections on your screen, I don't see that on my screen. But if
All right, well, then the
if you
motion,
don't
then
hear
there
any
is,
objections, then the motion is carried unanimously.
all right,
for the
and that's
record.
the case. All right, thank you. Thank you. For the record, there have been no objections or dissents raised. So the motion is carried unanimously, as you said. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
With that, folks, I think that brings us to the end of our meeting. So I'm going to adjourn the meeting at this point and thank you very much for your participation. I think this is, as I said, very historic. I think it went well. Thank you to staff for having well prepared for this particular electronic meeting as opposed to hearing. Got to be careful with the words. And I think any other business, Mr. Secretary Treasurer, that we should mention at this point, or can we simply be adjourned?
No other business, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, and have yourselves a very nice evening.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Are we still live